Welcome to video number 11. In this video, I'm going to work out problem number 13 on your PowerPoint whiteboard practice. And after I work out this example, you'll be able to do problems 14 through 16 with no problem. So it says to write the standard form of the equation of the ellipse, and it gives us two clues. First, it tells us the vertices are at 9, 5, and negative 17, 5. And the key thing we want to know here is that vertices are always on the major axis, okay? All right, and it tells us the foci are 8, 5, negative 16, 5. Again, the foci are also on the major axis. And the standard form, right, is x minus h squared, and it's either going to be over a squared or b squared, depending on where the major axis is. And so I'm not going to fill those in yet. And then it's y minus k squared over either a squared or b squared equals 1. So we'll fill these in a second. So we want to determine first, is this a horizontal ellipse or is this a vertical ellipse? Okay, so the first thing I would do is I would actually physically draw the vertices. Let's actually do just a quick graph. Okay, it doesn't have to look pretty, it just has to be like roughly correct. All right, the first point is over 9 up 5. Again, this is not drawn to scale whatsoever. Just giving you a rough idea of where that is. That's one of the vertices. And the other one is at negative 17. That's like over here, negative 17, 5. Okay. So again, not drawn to scale, but you get the idea. So this must be a horizontal ellipse, right? Because if I look at these 2 points, 5 is the same height, it must be a horizontal ellipse. That means a squared is going to go under the x-axis and b squared is going to go under the y-axis, right? The x-axis is going to be longer, okay? That's the first thing I want to make sure that I figure out. Okay, now what I would say here is we need to find HK, okay? We need to fill in HK, a squared, and b squared. So how can I find HK? Well, HK is the center of the ellipse, and I know that the center is exactly in the middle of the two vertices. So you can go back to geometry and the concept of midpoint, and if I can just find the midpoint between the two vertices, that will also be the exact center of the ellipse. So I have to think about this. What number is in the middle of negative 17 and 9? Well, that number should be negative 4. Okay, so let's make sure we agree with that, right? Is negative 4 is 13 units from positive 9. Negative 4 is also 13 units from negative 17. So I'm convinced that the center h value is negative 4. And then what's in the middle of 5 and 5? Well, how about 5? Okay, so I'm finding that center point. Okay, so that's going to be good because now I know my h value and I know my k value. So I'm going to fill those in a second. And then all that remains is to find a squared and b squared. Okay, if we know the center, right, we know A. A is that distance right here from the center to the vertex. And I can physically see that that's a distance of 13. So A is equal to 13, which means a squared is equal to 169, okay? Now, I need to find B, but I don't have that information. The only thing I know are that the foci are in a certain location. So the foci, remember, this is point C. So I know that this point here, 8, 5, C is going to be the distance from the center to the foci. So how far is it from negative 4 to 8? That distance is 12. So C itself is 12. All right, now you may remember in a previous video there's a formula that states that C is equal to plus or minus the square root of a squared minus b squared. And if we know C, we can plug it into the formula. We already know a squared is 169. We can solve for b squared and put it in our formula. So C is 12. This is going to equal plus or minus the square root of a squared, which I already know is 169, minus b squared. Now, to solve for b squared, I want to square both sides, so it's under a radical. And you can actually ignore the plus or minus for now. But 12 squared is 144. This is going to equal to the square root undoes the squared term, 169 minus b squared. If I add b squared to both sides and subtract 144, 169 minus 144 is going to give me 25. So I know that b squared is 25. Now I can fill in all of my missing information, and I'm going to do that here. So x minus h, I'm going to do x minus a minus 4, so that's going to appear like x plus 4 quantity squared, all over a squared, and I know that a squared is 169. Then I'm going to do y minus k quantity squared, okay? And k is the 5, so it's going to be y minus 5 squared over b squared, which I figured out is 25, is equal to 1. And this is the equation of the ellipse in standard form that has the vertices and the foci that were given. So one good way to test your understanding is to actually type this into Desmos. You can actually carefully type this equation in, and you can click on the points to see that these points are indeed on this ellipse. So with that, you should be able to do numbers, I think it's numbers 14 to 16. And just remember, this is like a puzzle, right? So you're just trying to figure out the missing pieces. And my advice to you would be, before you even start, draw a picture and figure out whether you think it's a horizontal or a vertical ellipse, and kind of use some detective work to fill in the missing pieces. And as always, please let me know if you have questions.